So let's get started with Jean, because Jean, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you very much for having me here.
And, I'm always interested in businesses finding ways to do things better. So we're very interested in hearing about your process. But let's just get a little bit of background about yourself, first of all, and so we can understand where this is coming from.
Yeah, I've been educated as a financial guy, as a chartered accountant. So I started my career as an auditor. Then I grew up into organizations as a controller, CFOs. And then I worked for small companies, medium-sized and big companies. And then I got engaged in technology, and then realized that the work I was doing in finance was not up to my expectations, because technically we were there to create some value. Mm-hmm. And I was not convinced as much that I was part of the value creation process. And then I moved into the technology implementation, business process improvement, technology, web technology again, and work with some of the best consulting companies in the world and most innovatives. Mm-hmm. To realize about 5 years ago that even all of that great stuff, even if there was a lot of goodwill to change things, mm-hmm. that when I was reflecting on the work I had done in the past, sometimes change did work and sometimes change did not work. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, why is it that in some instances it did work and mm-hmm. in some instances it did not work? Mm-hmm. And how can I look in the world? And I was looking at what all the big firms are doing, and I was wondering why, if they are so good at giving advice, why is it that we have so much problems? Mm-hmm. And then I started to look at what was being done in the world, and looking at all the great thinkers, and again wondering, with all those great ideas, why is it that nobody's doing all of that? To realize that the challenge is, as we are in a world that is going much quicker, mm-hmm. is more complex, and if you don't move, you might hit the road or a wall much quicker. I said, how can you now look at the business, and if I would have to do it from a white piece of paper, how would mm-hmm. I build an approach mm-hmm. that would take care of the people side, understand what it takes to get people to engage, what it takes to get people to become happier in their work, and what it takes for management and the leadership team to bring everyone together in a way that is meaningful. Mm-hmm. And that way of doing was to build a bridge between strategy, execution, and how you look at the numbers, the finance. Because all of these buckets have been looked after by strategic consultants on strategy. You have experts on execution, and you have experts on the numbers. But despite of all the world, there are very few who are looking throughout mm-hmm. from the numbers. If you're in execution, you're not looking at the strategy, you're trying to execute what you're being told or someone has written. And if you're in looking at the numbers, you have no clue what's going on. So
they're not speaking to each other. Is that what you're saying, Jean?
There's no connection. Okay. There's no conversation, and okay. The people in finance are busy trying to put their numbers together. And now, with the way the world is going, over the last 40 years, there has been a big shift. Because about 40 years ago, the market value, what you
4 years? I'm sorry,
40 years.
40, okay.
Yeah, over the last 40 years, the market value of a company was equal to their assets and their financial and whatever equipment you had on the ground. Mm-hmm. Today, the value of a company is 5 times bigger than your financial and your physical assets. So now there is a big gap.
What's that difference made up of? What is that, all goodwill?
The difference is about the intangible, what you don't see, of how good people think you are at growing your company.
What do they call that on the balance sheet?
It's not on the balance sheet.
And how do you measure that?
It's not there, because you cannot measure that.
Okay.
So, as accountants have been trying to measure the intangible, but they are trying to do that under the accounting principles, and it doesn't fit, the rules anymore.
Sounds to me like fiat currency.
Okay, so, all right, so where do we start here? Should we, do you want to start describing your process?
I mean, I can talk about not necessarily describing the system, but what's the purpose behind the system.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, the purpose behind the system is to bring everyone, whether you are working at the top, in the middle, or the bottom, to use a common approach to when you're tackling problems. And the purpose is to shift from trying to stop resolving problems to look at opportunities.
Okay.
So a shift, it sounds like a fundamental shift from solving problems to searching and exploiting, I guess, opportunities.
Yeah, because solving problems is never funny, and it has kept people busy for the last hundreds of years.
Okay.
But now if you start to look at, you know, solving problems is about what I have done in the past,
Yeah.
as opposed to opportunities. What can I do with you
Yeah.
in the future that could help us to build a better relationships?
So that's a shift in perception, is it not?
It's a shift in perception, and it's a shift in the whole thinking of, you know, financial statements are past historical information.
Okay.
People are busy looking at historical information that do not mean anything in terms of where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, when you look at companies like Research and Motion and Apple, if you look them back 2 years ago and you would look at the financials, you could not tell which one was the worst or the best.
Does this mean we have to redefine generally accepted accounting principles?
It is not about, I mean, what I did is, the rules of accounting, it's just about what I see that I can touch, that I can attach a price to it. But now 80% of the business is, the value of the business is about relationships.
Really? You're saying 80% of business...
The value of a business is about how good am I at building demand for my products and my services, getting people to want to buy it, getting employees to want to work for my company.
So Jean, how did you determine that? Because you just said 80% of the business now is about the value. I find that's a very powerful bullet statement.
It was a thought 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I found some evidence in some research that has been done.
Okay.
And now all the accounting firms have done substantive empirical studies and research on looking at the Standard & Poor 500 and looking at the company value, book value, and compare that to the market value.
Can you give us an example of something that it would be 80% of that? Like, I would think companies are more about the, you're saying companies are more about the experience, so I would be thinking maybe like a Starbucks. Would that be an example of something that you're saying?
A very simple example is like Apple and Research and Motion. If you look at the companies, you know, when you look at the financials, what people look you know, on a monthly basis to make decisions, when you look at the assets and the cash, and you would look at the financial assets and the physical assets of Apple and Research and Motion, you know, $1 for $1. The market value, so what an investor would pay for Research and Motion, was 80 cents for each dollar of assets they had.
Okay.
And they would pay $5 for each dollar of assets, financial and physical assets, that Apple had. And the difference was in the perception of the market, of the investors, in the ability of the leadership team to convert what I see, my physical and financial assets, in bigger assets.
In other words, the value, the stock market value of that company is 5 times greater than the value of the assets.
Exactly.
Okay. What might that not just mean that the market is hopelessly inflated for the equity market?
It's not about being inflated because, you know, 2 years before, Research and Motion stock was also 5 times bigger than its asset base. But the market lost confidence in the ability of Research and Motion to take what they have to create bigger financial assets.
Okay, fair enough. So let's go with that then. Okay, so what do we do? What's the new process?
I mean, like I said, it's not a process, it's a system where you bring people to stop solving problems, but to learn what they're doing in their day-to-day work, what management is doing in their strategic approach, to understand that what do I need to do going forward to build better relationships? How can I engage my stakeholders to provide me with input that I can now change the way I do my products, or I put my services out there, that could make a difference, and a difference that is relevant for me who's going to buy the product.
Okay. So now, what does that look like in real life?
What does it look like? 8 years ago, I was driving a sports car, and a great brand. And the part of the experience was I had to go and do an oil change 4 times a year. And that was great, because whenever I would go to the dealer, the croissant, the coffee, the experience was totally amazing at the place. When I would come back to pick up my car, the car would be clean, and people were friendly, smiling, and all of that. So a week after that experience, I received a phone call. And they said, look, how was your experience? So I said, my experience was 10 on 10. There's nothing else I can ask for. But then they asked, is there one thing that we're not doing, that we could be doing, that could make a big difference for you? I said, wow, that's a great question. And then I said, let me think about that for a few seconds. And then I said, you know what? Now I have to go and do an oil change 4 times a year. If I would only have to go there once a year, so instead of every 5,000 kilometers, I would change once every 25,000 kilometers, I'll be happier. Because even though I have all the best experience in the world, when I go there, my want is I don't want to go there as many times, because I'm wasting 3 days of work that I did not want. So making a long story short, I did a quick calculation of the impact of this input, because 18 months after I go to get my lease was over, I go to get and see what I would do next, and the sales rep said, Mr. Letourneau, now we have a new oil. Oh, I said, well, what is your new oil? He said, we have shifted from regular oil to synthetic oil. And he said, now you only need to come here once a year for an oil change. Wow, that's great. So anyway, that got me curious, and I made a calculation a couple of weeks ago of the impact this had on the dealer overall and on me. So me, as a customer, it made me happier, because I didn't have to go there 4 times a year, because I had to go and drive my car. I have to go back and pick it up. They have to drive me back home. They have to clean my car. So anyway, making a long story short, the bottom line impact on that brand was more than $1 billion to the bottom line. Plus, me as a customer, I saved hundreds of dollars, because I didn't have to go there 4 times a year. So I save time, I save gas, I save energy, I save emotional experience, possibility of an accident, and that dealers save time as well in their stores, because now instead of having a place taken for 2 hours a year, they only had 30 minutes a year, meaning that they could do more valuable work in that time.
A heck of a lot less coffee and croissants too.
Exactly. So when you add that, when you add this up, it was more than $1 billion for them, and it was more than $500 million from a customer standpoint, and everyone was a lot more happy.
Not to mention the loyalty you get from something like that.
Okay. So obviously they were focused on finding opportunities, and that's why they were engaging you in that relationship, to get that information from you. Now we've got some graphics. I don't know, will that help us illustrate?
That will give hopefully some kind of a picture of what this could look like over time.
Okay, so let's look at the first slide here, and so this is the current
model
environment of a typical company now, a fragmented approach to management. Do you want to just talk quickly about this?
Yeah, I mean, what it shows, it's a bunch of silos at the bottom. Technology, people might not go to and might not see the whole thing, but technology that is fragmented. Very little interactions between the departments. You have old filing cabinets where everybody is hiding the intelligence that they gather. And then you have a CEO and board of directors interacting with all kinds of stakeholders in a fragmented and non-systematic manner.
Okay. All right. So I think we get that. Running an organization is a complex complicated thing. So let's look at what's the next slide that we're going to look at right now?
I mean, the next slide now shows that now we are trying to let go all the lines between the departments, between the stakeholders, and we're trying to engage people in a relationship, in a conversation, in a way that is systematic, meaning that I don't talk to you when it's nice that I need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Meaning, you know, some customer experience is about me as a company talking to you when I want to. So it has to be more through relationships. And if it's a through relationships, it means it has to be more dynamic. Meaning we need to be engaged in talking to each other.
Okay, and you're talking about getting rid of the lines of the formal lines of communication that are represented by a hierarchical organization.
It means that you can keep the lines, because the lines for me, technically in my humble career, meant nothing. But it is mental lines in the mind of many people that restrict them from talking to the person in the next door.
Okay, so, and also we're looking at engage any stakeholder engaging with any other stakeholder in communication when it's appropriate.
Yeah. It's not when it's appropriate. It means it has to be done in a systematic manner.
Systematic, okay.
Because the goal here is to bring the entire organization to understand what the hell is going on.
All right.
That to bring everyone from the top to the middle to the bottom to understand what it is that we're doing, that we're going to create more engagement from our customers, and doing it in a way that is always the same, so that everyone understands where we are in the process.
Okay, so it's a systematic approach to communication that kind of allows all stakeholders to talk to other stakeholders, and that includes stakeholders within the organization and also outside the organization.
Exactly.
For example, suppliers and customers.
Regulators, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So does this mean, in this new model, that anybody can talk to anybody, regardless of status or position?
I mean, it means that when people learn that the conversation that you could engage with, you know, so what are the parameters and what intelligence are you looking for? Technically, anyone in the organization can engage in an intelligent conversation. Because the purpose is to gather intelligence in a way that the organization can digest, understand the higher want of your stakeholder, and bring back that intelligence within an organization.
Okay, now we don't have too much time left, and I know this is a very big and complicated topic. Let's just go through the rest of these diagrams, and if you can just explain through these.
So I mean, technically what you see here is the typical organizations, the way they work, where you have a bunch of circles trying to talk to each other, where you have the stakeholders on the left, where you have the strategy people on the next in the next circle, and then you have the execution, and then you have another box. It's for the execution and the excellence, and then you do what at the end on the right. It's about the reporting.
Okay.
So it's all fragmented, it's all silos, and it's all my telephone booth.
Okay, so, and we're going to see what this transitions to under your system.
Okay.
I believe the next slide here. So is this it?
Yeah, exactly. So what I say is technically the approach, the system must be the same throughout the organization, a system that allows you to engage, have a conversation, learn, understand what the input and the value of what is the value of what you hear in the organization, how is it going to make you happier as a stakeholder, and then me being able to connect that to the numbers.
Okay, so let me just ask you, because I know that we are, oops, I'm getting a call. I know that we're, can we have the cameras back here on the studio? I know that we're talking about a new approach to identifying opportunities and exploiting them, but what happens when there is a problem in your system? Because there will inevitably be problems. So I know we're shifting focus, but what happens
How would you
when you do
approach
have a problem, how does your system view that?
I mean, like I see, when I'm not looking, the system does not look at problems, it looks at opportunities, because I'm not trying to fix what we've done wrong in the past.
Right.
I'm trying to understand if there's one thing I need to do to make you feel better about what I'm doing.
I understand.
What it is.
But you're going to have problems. What are you going to do with that?
No, you're not going to have problems. You're going to have opportunities.
It's shifting the conversation from let me help to fix your problems to let me, you and I engage and fix conversations.
Okay, so what happens? Okay, I'm in the customer service department of one of these companies, and a customer's calling and they have a problem.
Canadian Tire.
And this organization has adopted your system. How does that problem-solving interaction differ under the new system?
I mean, under the new system, it's about let me understand what can I do next time you are going to come back to see me at Canadian Tire to make your experience better.
Right.
Because whatever I'm doing, you had a bad experience this time. So what it is, the one thing I can do so that next time I can make sure that I'm going to build a better relationship with you because I screw up this time.
Okay, so I know that what happens in a lot of organizations is that frontline customer service person is trying to do their best to do exactly what you're saying, but then there's no opportunity for them to deliver that information in a meaningful way such that action along the lines that you're talking about will actually happen.
Yeah.
And this happens so often in organizations.
Exactly, because the way I call it, this is gold when someone do something good or learn something, and when you put that in the garbage, this is a waste.
Of course.
So what this approach and this system is about learning what did not work and what can we do next time so that people have a better experience. And me telling you, dear customers who are listening to you, like what that car company said, they came back to me and said, Jean, we now have this new oil, synthetic oil, and that was my feedback. And I said, wow, that's great. So it's about closing the loop with customers.
Right.
Engaging in a conversation, not as I want, but as it makes sense. Meaning I listen to you, and then I tell you, here's what I'm doing with what I heard.
Okay, great. Now, should we look at the rest of these diagrams?
It might be interesting to look at the next one. And so the purpose at the end is connecting what people do with financials. And financials, what I said, 20% of the value is now in the book. It's because people have been still looking, when you look at financial information, in black and white. And what we're trying to do here is to bring a human element in the numbers. So we now look at the numbers in a new way.
So what does financial success mean then?
Financial success means to make sure that we have engaged the customers, and then to measure how much revenue we make with engaged customers. And if we have unengaged customers, how much revenue we are making with them. Instead of looking at products by region, by product family, I want to look at how am I doing with my customers? How am I doing with my employees? I spend $10 million of salaries. I want to know how much money of that 10 million is with happy people and how much is with unhappy people. And then make a difference and shifting the people.
Okay, so
wow, that sounds amazing.
We're just about out of time, Jean, but I have one more question, and I think this will help wrap it up. But okay, assuming that I'm a company that, like in my experience, a lot of companies, they say they want to do stuff, they say they want to change, they talk the talk of customer service is important, and then when it comes to when the finance guys come in and say we're spending too much money, we got to cut, where they cut, and it's not the management on the management side, right? So they don't walk the walk. So what does it look like for a company to engage with you and implement this process? What does that look like for a company?
I mean, it starts small, and it starts by understanding money that you spend that is waste and money that you spend that is value. And then the goal is to reduce the waste, meaning stop doing what is turning you off and taking that time and saving the money. Like I said to you, BMW, the car company, added $1 billion to their bottom line by doing a simple thing, changing the oil, giving them more time, more revenue for them, less expenses for me, and so on and so forth. So sometimes traditional CFOs are looking to cut expenses without any understanding on the impact it may have on stakeholders. I mean, we saw that in Toronto with banks doing outsourcing work.
Yeah, they're cutting the expenses, but they're cutting opportunities, or they're cutting money that is actually that they should be spending, and they're not cutting money that they're not getting any value for.
Yeah, I mean, they're cutting something that is valuable in the eyes of the stakeholders. Like, you know, if you send jobs to India, that's great for your bottom line, but it is not great for me as a shareholder who is investing money in your company to create jobs. So you can no longer just look at straight numbers. You need to understand the impact, and that's why those ongoing conversations, as you saw, you know, in the chart, are very important. Because if you are aware that if I cut my cost in salaries because I'm sending jobs to India, I'm going to have a backlash from my investors who are going to sell their stock because I'm not creating jobs here in Canada.
Okay.
RBC actually went right through that. Went through that very issue.
Okay.
Jean, thank you for coming in and
thank
telling
you. It
us.
sounds amazing.
I mean, I have a lot of more questions, but
yeah, we could do this for the whole 2 hours.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was my great pleasure.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you and follow up and maybe find out more, what's the best way for them to do that? Is there a website? Or?
They can reach me, and maybe the easiest way is sending me an email at Jean, Jean, at VC for value creation, number 2.ca. So Jean, Jean, at VCvaluecreation.ca.
VC2.
VC2, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Jean. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to come back right after this with Goran Mitic, or as we all call Mita. Now, Mita, could we play one of your son videos here to introduce the concept? Okay, so we're going to watch this video. We're going to come back with Mita as Liquid Lunch continues right after this.